Why aren't black people voting? You asked why aren't black people exercising their power? I mean, one thing I want to say is that I think that we're forgetting that a lot of black people don't recognize that it is a power. I mean, I believe we have to go all the way to the beginning. Absolutely. I mean, I believe there are a lot of black Americans that feel powerless. I feel like a lot of black Americans feel countryless. And so when we say it's your responsibility to vote for this country, I don't feel that there's an attachment there. And I feel like we have to start at the beginning.
Despite the history.
Absolutely.
Of people dying for their right to vote.
Hey, dog, listen. The reality is that from a messaging standpoint, we had Terrence Woodbury. That does not work.
It doesn't work.
And in fact, Terrence was on, even using voter suppression doesn't work.
No.
Say it again, Adrian.
Oh, I had a comment to make that dovetails off of what she just said. You're right. We feel countryless. Many of us feel countryless, but the other side is actually using that to their advantage to drive wedges even between us and our own communities.
Yeah. We talked a lot about education, and education needs to begin there, where people get to understand how important it is for them to vote and how it affects them. You know, we have like Secretary of State running this year, and I don't think people understand this person can affect the vote. They can say, you know what? They can win or lose elections, right? But I don't think that the average person knows that. And we're not learning these things in high school. People have no information. And so it really does need to begin with just the average Blow Joe that has no idea, doesn't recognize the power, and says, what's the point? Why? Right? We have to get those people.
And Randy,
well, we have to speak in more in plainer language.
Right.
Democrats are not going to successfully compete in Florida, at least for a decade.
At least, yes. I mean, there's not much to say. Yes, the place is, it's a mess. It's a hot mess.
No, but speak to it from the approaching it like a corporate takeover. You got to completely gut, downsize to upsize. That, to me, that has to be the approach.
And to honestly look at who are your employees, who's in this state. I don't think people know that. Like, let's get to know this actual state. Like you were saying, there's so much diversity when you look at Florida. Even if you just look at one county, Miami-Dade is a whole good study in itself. I could say a lot about that, and you know how Cubans are completely different than other people who call themselves Latinos. I mean, completely different. So really, just knowing to whom you're trying to appeal. And what's important to them. I think they need to start there. Some black people have worked so hard to be the acceptable black, to get to the point that they are.
The magical Negro.
Absolutely. That they have literally lost themselves. And they don't trust themselves anymore. Because I have actually sat in rooms where I see white people talk about blackness with intelligence, and the black person's just sitting there. And I'm like, you literally are taking this white person as an expert on who you are. Right? And the white person will sit and tell you, no, you don't need to advertise there. This is what we need to do. And I'm like, I don't know who this white person is, but what I do know is that they're not black, right? And so we lose our way, like we lose confidence in even who we are, because we have muzzled ourselves for so long trying to make it that we forget to listen to our own voices. When you talk about listening to the voices of black people, listen to your own daggone black voice. There you go.
That black voters are making small business decisions, healthcare decisions. They're making multiple decisions, and they're going to have to micro-target and target them based upon what they care about versus sort of this blanket thing, and it's not going to be, let me swing by the church. It's going to have to be tailored, targeted messaging, and also a tailored message to black women that's different to black men.
You're absolutely right. I feel as if they do see us as monolithic. We're just seen as one group. And even when you go back and you were talking about the corporations and how they didn't play on how corporations have been greedy, if they could have taken that narrative and drilled it down to the human story. Remember, people couldn't even get formula for their babies, right? If they could make them remember that, if they could make them remember how these corporations were gouging us on prices when it comes to gas, when it comes to formula, and how did that affect us? When it comes to small businesses, how are we affected? Even when on the outside, yes, it looks like there may be a tax cut. On day to day, how are we being affected by that? And that's what we need to do, is really speak directly to a person's day to day. And I think that we oftentimes speak theoretically and talk about things like democracy. And like you said earlier, we can't eat democracy. Democracy doesn't fund my business. Democracy doesn't help me feed my baby. Democracy, you know, and that's what we need to get out of.
But Randy, when it comes to the issues, though, it also has to be broadened. I really think Democrats made a huge mistake somehow thinking the Roe v. Wade decision was the be-all to end-all, and that's what everybody was going to be voting on. That simply wasn't going to be the case. There needed to be, you got to hit folk on different issues. It was clear the economy was a fundamental issue. It was clear inflation was an issue. And to somehow think that the Dobbs decision was going to be it, that's crazy. You need as many votes as possible, not just hope more women turn out than you expect.
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. I believe that they thought that when the Roe versus Wade was overturned, that absolutely was going to be a watershed moment for us. And I believe they somewhat got comfortable and lazy, to be honest.
And it looked good early in the summer.
It did look
but that was early.
People forget.
Right. And you know, we have...
inflation kept rising.
Right,
and that's
right.
it. And at the end of the day, people are going to vote with their pocketbooks. Can I get to work and not spend so much money on gas? Can I pay my rent? Is the rent affordable? At the end of the day, you have to deal with the issues that people have just to survive. And particularly when you look at the profile of a typical voter, there's not people who are actually right now concerned with Roe versus Wade, if we're being honest about it. And so, yeah, I think that was a major mistake.
But the Democrats